Yeah.
Now, each day during the campaign, we're giving you the chance to question a senior politician about the issues that matter to you. We'll be hearing from all the main parties as Britain decides. And this morning, we're joined by Conservative Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, and you can watch LBC's election call in HD at lbc.co.uk. Mr. Mayor, welcome to the programme.
Good morning, Nick. So this is your show, not my show.
This is my show, not your show for once. Yes, I know. It's all changed during the election. So, on the weekend, you talked about a battle for Britain. You talked about the need to ensure that your followers and others vote Conservative. They even wheeled Sir John Major away from the cricket. They dragged him away from the cricket yesterday. He became Mystic Major and said that there'd be all sorts of doom if Britain was to vote Labour. Why? You rattled the Conservatives?
No, I think there's a...
You are rattled, aren't you?
No, absolutely not. I think that if you look at where we were last week, we were on average about 1 point behind, and we're now on average about 1 point ahead in all these polls, and I think that clearly that understates the Conservative position. I think people are looking at the big facts of this election, and as the days go by, what have we got, 2 weeks left, something like that? I think they will really drill down to the issue that it is a binary choice. Do you want to go forward with the Conservatives with a strong and growing economy that has been turned around in the last 5 years? And, by the way, with a Conservative election manifesto that I think is absolutely terrific? Or do you want to go backwards to Miliband and Balls, the guys who drove it over the cliff last time? And as mayor of this city, which is, the most successful urban economy now in Europe, it really chills my blood to think of those guys taking over again. They wrecked the economy.
It's a bit desperate, though, as I say earlier, isn't it, to bring Sir John out of retirement like that?
No, I think Sir John Major is a very distinguished elder statesman of this country, and he's entitled to his view. And I think he wanted to make a particular point, which is relevant. All those good things that we want to deliver. So, pushing out much more free childcare per week that we're going to be delivering by 2017. He's going to be explaining that. All the good stuff of politics, and tilt it sharply to the left. They want to borrow another 148 billion pounds. Okay. They want to scrap.
Why have you come onto it so late? Why has Mr. Cameron used you as a super sub?
Out and about all over the place, and as local papers up and down the land will testify, I've been out on the street, and
do you get a warm welcome?
And I will continue to.
You get a warm welcome, do you?
On the whole, I'm not going to. Don't embarrassing. Actually, it's all been incredibly good natured, and I think people have been. I think the truth is, for the first few days, and don't forget that is what happened in 1992 as well.
All right, okay. Let's get some calls.
Particularly, but. Is there not a threat that this could backfire and lead to the breakup of the union?
Well, so the risk, I think, therefore, is that they will be held to ransom by the SNP and defence on spending.
What are those crackers policies,
well,
Mr. Johnson?
The imagine some sort of super tax would be imposed. There is a kind of chop-smacking relic taxing the Sassenachs in if I've got in London and the southeast in order to pay for. There are all sorts of risks in that approach. In the Scottish nationalist tail wagging the Labour Party dog. I don't want to see that, and I think the only answer is to go for a.
Yes, good morning. In the last hour, they were talking about the migrants and, the problem of housing.
Clearly, I do not...
My question
forgive me.
Yes, he said the Conservative policy is for what, Steve?
The policy is about brownfield development in particular.
Okay. Steve, my policy is not to let any development go ahead on...
So this is your policy?
Are being regenerated. Many of these sites, of course, have got problems of contamination. They're very expensive. Look at what we've achieved in the Olympic Park, in Greenwich, what we're going to do in Old Oak Common.
Yep. Employment.
Yeah.
So you're creating
completely
along the A1 and the A10 and all the rest of it round here. And it's...
I can speak with particular experience of what we've done in London. The way to get it going is the transportation to get people to be able to set up work there. If you look at what's going on, for instance, in the Olympic Park, where you had an area that was pretty derelict. We could have decided just after the games to put in lots of infill housing. Instead, what we've done is the Thames Gateway Bridge was the wrong plan for that part of London. It would have meant terrible congestion up Knee Hill. It was a bad idea. But what we effectively agreed with the planning. It's a very long and boring answer, this, Rima. But
She's 10.
I know, but there was a few. Okay,
10, and you've bested the Prime Minister and the Mayor. What are you going to do with your life? Do you know yet what you're going to be? letter in the Times today that says the decision not to prosecute Labour peer Lord Janner over child abuse offences, which his family denies, should be reversed. It's concerns of a whitewash and it's damaging public confidence. How damaged is public confidence?
Well, I think it's very important that nobody should be under any impression that. And I have obviously some sympathy with the DPP, because they're trying to, as I understand it, they're trying to cope with the fact that the Lord Janner has dementia, and they can't see how.
In what way has he not had an easy ride?
They can't see how he could be put on trial. But
in what way has he not had an easy run?
In what way has he not
prosecution? He escaped prosecution 3 times. Now, I say again, his family deny all allegations. He escaped prosecution 3 times. The current DPP admits mistakes were made, and they should have gone to trial. The 4th time, sadly, it would appear the man is not fit enough to stand trial. Are you saying he's not had an easy ride? How would you describe it then?
Well, the guy has. Yes, I think it's obviously very, very. It's disgraceful. It's regrettable. And questions need to be asked, and there needs to be a proper analysis, if not an inquiry, into how we've managed to get to this position. It may be, but Nick, before you come back in full frothing magnificence, it may be that there is a way forward. It may be that Alison Saunders can think of some approach that would allow the facts of the case to be tested in some legal way, without, as it were, putting Mr. Lord Janner on the stand.
A trial of facts, as it's known.
It may be possible to
You would support that?
If there was some means known to the law.
Well, it's called a trial of facts. It's not like an unknown
to establish, what we know, and indeed, I think perhaps to go back over the question of exactly in what way Lord Janner is unfit to testify.
So you want a trial of facts?
I think that would be good. I also think it might be reasonable for people just to be satisfied, doubly sure that the medical disqualification, the aggregate that is being produced is actually valid. Let's be. I think we might need a second opinion from the doctors, as it were.
You'd like to see that as well?
I think that might be reasonable.
Howard's in Islington. You're through to Boris Johnson. Go ahead, Howard.
Good morning, Mr. Johnson.
Good morning.
Good morning. I wanted to ask you about your views on the national issue of the immigration.
Yes, sir.
That we are debating, and perhaps is one of the most important aspects of the current election. You're standing for Westminster this time around, so my question to you is not really in your capacity as mayor.
Yeah.
But in your...
Hang on, we can't get into constituency affairs.
I've been told
a prominent
that
Conservative...
I've been told that
I must take control of this. As a prominent Conservative, you can ask Mr Johnson what you like. What you mustn't do is even mention the town. That'll do.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Well, look, I'm sorry, Howard, on...
And your concerns for immigration. What, an immigration control, Howard? Is that what you were driving at, sir?
Do you just want a general answer?
Indeed. Okay. Immigration control generally, not to any particular.
Point number one, whether I'm mayor of London, candidate for somewhere,
whatever you might be,
candidate for Parliament, or just a human being looking at the British economy, I have no doubt at all that immigration has been very beneficial in many respects for London and for the UK. And we've you just go around, Nick, you go around, walk out of this studio, go into any retail outfit, go into any restaurant, go into any cafe or whatever, coffee shop, and you will find hard-working people who've come from abroad who want to make their lives here, who are paying taxes, who are keeping the London economy...
Have they stolen jobs from indigenous Brits?
Keeping the London economy churning, and who are paying
Have they
taxes.
Stolen jobs from indigenous Brits?
What they have certainly done, in my view, is help power the London economy. That does mean that we need to focus on... I don't believe in a zero-sum theory.
But have they stolen jobs from indigenous Brits?
No, not stolen, because I don't believe in a Colbertian lump of labour fallacy. I don't believe that there's a finite amount of work to be done.
So why isn't it British kids serving me my coffee or selling me my shoes?
And well, very often it is, but in many cases in London it isn't, and there are reasons for that. And one of them is to do.
When did you last get a coffee from a British kid?
One of them is to do with skills. One of them to do with how people see their lives developing. I think it'd be fair to say in this country, you compare America. In America, young people in America regard working in McDonald's or a coffee shop or whatever it happens to be as a stepping stone, or as something actually that is pretty good in itself. Very often, it's an amazing thing about America. You and I were there recently. Is how people doing a job of work actually feel tremendous pride in whatever it is that they're doing. Here in the UK, we have actually a slightly different way of looking at things, and we think that these jobs are quote-unquote dead-end jobs, or not, a mark of a lack of success. In America, they regard them as stepping stones. And I think we need to have a culture of higher skills, of aspiration, of ambition. And one of the failings I think we have in the UK, and this is what problems we've had in London in particular, I think, is the whole skills agenda has been totally mismanaged. We've had money being
mismanaged by who?
By the system. Money
by this government.
By all governments. One of the things,
including this government.
I'm afraid so, but it was a historic problem.
Well, they could have put it right. They've had 5 years.
I just want coming to that. Thank you for allowing me to point it out. Thanks to George Osborne and the Conservatives
and Theresa May
and Theresa May and everybody else. We are now being allowed to. London is being given charge of the skills funding. So the 140 million available for skills for FE colleges in London is now going to be run by the boroughs, working with City Hall to target it at those colleges that actually need it, and producing the
but this is
courses,
suppressed wages, hasn't it?
Producing the courses.
These number of people coming here has suppressed wages.
I think it has certainly had most economists would say that it has exerted a downward pressure on wages,
yes.
Suppressed wages, however you want to put it. And one of the things that I've been campaigning for is a huge extension of the living wage, and I believe that this is a wonderful thing for our city. It has gone up. It is massively expanded under this mayoralty, the living wage. You have you have coffee shops in London that now pay it.
Yes,
you have coffee shops in London that now pay the living wage. You have more than 500 businesses that now pay it. Huge businesses that pay it. I hope LBC pays it.
Not if I was in charge, but I'm not, fortunately, so they probably do.
Well, that's a disgrace. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Of course, I'm not in charge of LBC. I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. The answer is yes. The answer is yes.
Are they going to put their thumbs up?
So this... No, the answer is yes. I've just told you yes. I've just been told yes in my ear. That's why I'm saying yes. So what do we do with these thousands of poor souls who are afloat in the Mediterranean off Libya?
Well done, LBC. And I do think that is an issue. I do think people who work hard should be paid reasonably.
Okay.
So my answers to Howard are, don't tell all foreigners to bog off.
Like Theresa May does.
Don't tell all foreigners to bog off. But don't take in people who want to scrub.
So you are at odds with the Home Secretary over this?
No, I'm completely at one and on all fours with the government and with what
Theresa May. You're on all fours with the government.
I'm at one with David Cameron and the government on what they're saying now about
but they did get it wrong.
About welfare. And the key thing, I think, for most fair-minded people, is that you shouldn't let people come in if they are going to leech, bludge, scrounge off the state. And so I think can I just finish this? The measures that we are putting in to reform the welfare system so that they can't claim benefits for several years, that seems to me to be entirely fair and entirely reasonable. Now, to get those changes, we need reform in Europe. I'm not one of the pessimists who think this is impossible to deliver. I think there are many countries around the table in Brussels that basically agree with us about this, and we should go for that reform and then put it to the people in a referendum. And for anybody thinking of voting for any other party but the Conservatives, that is the only way people of my generation, even your generation, our generation, Nick, exactly, are going to be able to the same generation. Did you vote in?
No, I didn't.
In the 1975, nor did I.
No.
We weren't allowed to vote.
I wasn't old enough.
No, you and I are about the same age. We weren't allowed to vote.
Well, I'll check your Wikipedia entry.
I'm okay.
I'm a big fan of Wikipedia, as I'm sure you are.
Huge. You and I weren't allowed to vote in the referendum in 1975, and
so what are these poor souls off the Italian coast? What do we do with them? 500 are said to be on their way to the UK. How many do we take?
Well,
what action does the British government take?
The first thing to do is to stop the people who are trafficking in human lives, and to I think that sending a warship or whatever we're going to do is entirely right. Myself, I'd like to see a real commitment to, getting to grips with these people and
what does that mean?
Rounding them. Well, there are people on the northern littoral of the Mediterranean who are actively conniving in murder because they are sending people to their deaths.
So you would send military personnel into Libya?
Unseaworthy vessels. And I think it needs a concerted European response. Right. And I know the Prime Minister is going to discuss that and to propose some British ideas tomorrow.
And military personnel into Libya?
I think you need to choke off the problem at source. You need to stop these people being put into boats and
by putting military personnel into Libya. That's the only way you're going to do it.
Well, I think that isn't the tradition that you don't discuss the use of special forces, but you need to do something.
Special forces into Libya.
You need to do something about it.
Well, I'm going to say that you're saying special forces.
I'm not. I'm a long way away from the discussions about this, but there are clearly some very highly organised and ruthless people who are sending people to their deaths in the Mediterranean. It seems to me that is something that should be the object of
special forces.
Concerted European response.
We've got it. The SAS and the SBS into Libya.
Led by Britain. I don't see why not.
OK, thank you for that.
Why not.
Ian's in Fulham. Ian, you're on the radio. Go ahead.
Hi, gentlemen. How are you this morning?
I'm good, sir. Your question, if you would. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask Boris. Boris, why do you think it's right to spend $100 billion or more on a nuclear weapons system that's never going to be used and is illegal under international law?
You're talking about Trident, I assume, are you, Ian?
Right. Yeah.
Trident, yes. Why spend all this money on something that's illegal and can't be used? Hang on the line, Ian. Let's see what Mr. Johnson has to say.
Well, Ian, it is a very difficult one, and I can see the argument that you make. I think over the next few years, there's no question that Trident will occupy more and more as a proportion of the UK's defence budget, whilst our armed forces, the British Army, goes down to about 90,000 or so, and I can see that argument, and I think the best answer I can give you, Ian, is that if we denuded ourselves of Trident, we really would be opening up the UK, the British government, to nuclear blackmail in a world that is ever more uncertain, and we cannot predict how events will turn out in the next 20, 30 years, alas, and we cannot say what will happen with the proliferation of nuclear weapons. You're already seeing the Pakistanis already have it, the North Koreans. We can't say exactly how those weapons will multiply across the world, and I'm afraid the logic of a nuclear retaliation or nuclear deterrence remains alive. And it is also true that Britain would lose a huge proportion of its current global influence and ability to act as a force for good and for moderation in the world if we weren't able to go into the conference chamber armed with that fundamental negotiating tool.
Ian, thank you. Nathaniel in Dover, you're through to Mr. Johnson. Mayor Johnson, go ahead, Nathaniel.
Oh, good morning, guys. Hope you're doing well.
Yes,
how are you?
Just a question about the recent policy, what's in the manifesto of the Conservatives about extending the right to buy to housing associations.
Yes, sir.
It directly affects me because I live in a housing association, and I would actually take up on the offer because it's my only way of getting on the housing ladder.
Right.
If you understand.
Yeah.
My question is, look, since the Thatcher years, the government have not been very good at building social housing. What is the guarantees that this isn't going to exacerbate the housing crisis that already exists in the country? How are the housing numbers going to be made up if everyone buys their housing association properties?
Yeah, Nathaniel, I think it's very important to bear in mind that this policy is really designed to help people like yourself, but without doing anything to stop the other range of policies that we have, which are designed to build more homes overall. And if you look at the ambition of the government, they want to. The whole Help to Buy scheme is designed to get the property market moving, and by gum, it did. If you look at the number of cranes in London now, we're building more homes. Look at what's happening in the whole of the country. We're building more homes in London now than any time since 1980. We are on track to deliver, much to my amazement, we're going to do, in spite of the recession, we're going to deliver, we've already done 95,000 new affordable homes in this Melty. We will deliver well over 100,000 by the time I leave office. New homes are being built. This was a policy, I think, Nathaniel, specifically designed to give people like yourself the chance to fulfil that
so
aspiration.
You've always been a fan, have you, of this right to buy?
Well, as I said,
I remind you of something you said last month.
With extending the right to buy to housing associations in the way that I think you're thinking of, is that it would be potentially extremely costly to this body. We would have to make up the difference. Housing associations are private bodies, as we all know. It would involve massive subsidies. Well, and
left-hand, right-hand, mixed messages, extremely costly, and now you're lauding it. Which is it?
Well, a very sensible warning to the government being issued there by the mayor, that's i.e. me, that you have to fund this policy because as everybody knows, Nathaniel knows, housing associations are private bodies. If you're going to ask if their stock is going to be sold at a 35% discount, which is what the proposal is, then they must be compensated, and the way that is going to be done is by ensuring that when councils dispose of very expensive property, which they do very often. There are many councils sitting on property worth millions.
Right.
Then that money is used to compensate the housing associations. Now, I can perfectly understand that is not always going to be popular with councils.
Right.
But don't forget that already in London, I think people don't remember this. Already in London, 30% of the housing stock in central London is already social housing of one kind or another. There is some hugely expensive stuff here. You can build 10 new affordable homes for the sale of one council property.
We're coming to a last minute. We have to be fairly tight on time. I know we can only do half an hour for various election reasons. So my last question is: if it is true as is being reported that the Conservative chairman Grant Shapps has been editing huge swathes of his Wikipedia page to make himself look good at the expense of rival Conservatives, is he in some form of emotional trouble at the moment, Grant Shapps?
Well, I think, Grant has said that the whole thing is a load of nonsense, and I think...
Was that the same way it was nonsense that he had a second job whilst sitting as an MP?
Completely trivial by comparison with the kind of stuff that we've been talking about throughout this programme, Nick. And, I think for most people who are wondering whether this election is going to mean more...
That he has a problem with the truth as regards his second job. That's trivial.
It is, I'm afraid...
That was only last month.
I said it was trivial by comparison with...
that he has a problem with the truth?
More free childcare, cuts in inheritance tax. Grant has said it's untrue. And
yes, I regret that, but his second job, which he said he denied over firmly, whatever that means, on LBC.
Well...
Then he had to admit that it was right. So now we hear this denial. Suppose he's denied it over firmly again. What does that say about Grant Shapps?
Grant has knocked this thing on the head. He said it's completely untrue and defamatory or whatever. And frankly, at this stage, I'm much more inclined to focus on the big issues of this election about the direction of the UK economy, whether we can use that economic success to help people with their childcare, stopping the impact.
Ever seen your Wikipedia entry?
I'm sure my Wikipedia entry has been edited by all sorts of people. I have not the faintest idea.
Your father used to make you read letters in the Times at the age of 5.
Well,
This is you, quotes, as a kid I was extremely spotty, extremely nerdy and horribly swotty. My idea of a good time was to travel to visit the British Museum. This is all in your Wikipedia entry.
That may be true. That bit's true.
Boris was brutally competitive with his sister Rachel. Is that true in your Wikipedia entry?
I think brutally is a bit much, but it's certainly true that if I, when called upon, when I have to play tennis with my sister, which I do, and I love playing tennis with my sister Rachel, it is one of the few when I've got set point and I'm serving. That is one of the few occasions in my life when I genuinely feel nervous.
And Boris, lastly, was heartbroken when his sister Rachel learnt to read before him.
Well,
it's all from Wikipedia.
That is a considerable exaggeration, but Wikipedia, from what you have just said, is a...
this isn't the hand of Grant Shapps.
A farrago of...
Nick Farrago.
Nigel Farrago. It's a Nigel Farrago of stuff that's cobbled together by hidden hands. You know not where, who they are, what they...
Well,
many of them know absolutely nothing about what they're talking about plainly. And so the thing, the golden rule is don't trust stuff you read on the internet, is my view.
Absolutely well said. Thank you, Boris Johnson. That was Election Call. On Monday we heard from Labour's Chuka Umunna. He was with Ian Dale. Yesterday it was UKIP's Deputy Chair Suzanne Evans. She was with Sheila Fogarty. Tomorrow at 9, Nick Clegg will be taking your calls with me here on Breakfast. It's part of LBC's Election Call, giving you the chance to question senior politicians about the issues that matter to you most. 9:32 News on LBC.
London Mayor Boris Johnson's told LBC he'd like to see a second medical opinion on whether Lord Janner is unfit to stand trial. The Director of Public Prosecutions announced last week the 86-year-old